Hello everybody, I'm Conquering History Games and welcome to Progress Report number 6 for Hearts of Iron 4 Kalterkrieg, Shadow of the Second Weltkrieg. This Progress Report is going to cover Part 1 of New England, which let me know in the comments if you want me to do Part 2 next, because Part 2 is already out, or if you just want me to continue going in the normal chronological order. So I'm now going to just go ahead and go into the first person mode. This Progress Report was written by Kennedy, the head of coding. Lore. New England first came into being, and by the way, I'm going with timeout. The music we're listening to, I'll try to remember to link it in the description, is Celtic Forest music for the Pack from Adrian von Ziegler. I thought it was very appropriate because, you know, the Kennedys were Irish, and New England has forests. Anyway, lore. New England first came into being in the fires of the American Civil War. During the countdown to MacArthur's deadline, the 6 regional governors of New England, as well as the governor of New York, met in Boston to discuss the situation. They voted not to join MacArthur's government. However, with the syndicalist takeover of New York City and the New York-Pennsylvania border far from secured, the governor's council was in a difficult position. The states each had National Guard regiments, but they were having enough trouble maintaining order in the states themselves, let alone defending against the syndicalists. As a result, the governors decided to write a letter to Mackenzie King's government to intervene. The Canadians and New Englanders agreed to a treaty, and Canadian troops marched south to secure the New England CSA border. For 6 months, from April 1937 to November 1937, the Governor's Council and Canadian Occupational Authority administered the nation jointly. Deciding that the new Commonwealth of New England was a legal continuance of the United States of America, the governors decided that the United States Constitution must be followed in its entirety. With the states generally tired of Hoover's austerity policies, the people elected Democrat David Walsh, the first president of New England. I'm just going to turn the music down a bit. That flute gets a little loud sometimes. Okay. Walsh was an isolationist, but open to government programs to get the government up and running. As a compromise to the progressive wings of the Democratic Party, Walsh picked Rhode Island Senator Theodore Green as his vice president. Green was a solid supporter of a Second Square Deal, a series of massive economic programs to rebuild the American economy. While Walsh was not overly enthusiastic with these programs, Green, the Walsh cabinet, and Congress were all solidly on board. Now I can't hear the music. Walsh and the New England Congress began rapidly building up the new nation's military and industrial prowess through the Second Square Deal. With the War Production Board established, New England was not only producing material for itself, but also for Canada, and for Lend-Lease to its friends in the Pacific States. Once Walsh was elected, delegates from New England and the Pacific States met in Ottawa and signed the Ottawa Protocols, a document in which both nations recognized each other as both sovereign and as legitimate successors of the United States. They pledged that should the United States be liberated from the tyrants in New Orleans and Chicago, they would reunite. As the CSA began to collapse, New England intervened. The capture of New York City came early in the war, and in 1939 the Canadians and New Englanders invaded properly, with New England capturing New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. New York City gained statehood in 1946 as a separate state, but New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania are still under military jurisdiction, with longist and syndicalist elements alike causing havoc. New England sent volunteers to Europe during the Second Weltkrieg, but did not participate directly. Indirectly, they benefited enormously, however, making massive amounts of cash selling equipment to its friends in the Entente. With his second term rocked with scandal over an illicit homosexual affair, President Walsh opted not to run for a third term in 1945. Businessman, former ambassador to Canada, and Secretary of State Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. received the Democratic nomination, while the conservative governor of Connecticut, Raymond Baldwin, ran for the Republicans. Kennedy was seen as a shoo-in, but in September 1945, the Kennedy campaign was rocked with a bribery scandal. News broke that Kennedy had paid off Mayor of Boston, James Michael Curley, a number of times for political favors. With Kennedy's support and upstate New York crushed and New York City not yet a state, Raymond Baldwin was able to squeak into the presidency. Okay, it's going to get meta here for a second. Some of you may notice that as recently as early January, Joseph Kennedy was still the president of New England in Kalterkrieg. We removed him for a number of reasons. First, he was an extremely problematic figure in the original timeline, virulently anti-Semitic and racist. He was also defeatist, anti-democracy, and corrupt. We felt that his figure would not have made for a good presidential figure, and felt he may actually be colluding with the AUS. Despite this, he was tremendously powerful, and we felt the best way to dispense with his figure was to have him lose in a presidential election. Don't worry, the Kennedy family will return. Before we dive into the actual Kalterkrieg content, I need to explain a further note on political parties. The U.S. political party system is already fairly difficult to translate into Kalterkrieg. As the U.S. is a true two-party system, Kaiserreich and KRG's multi-party political system is not easy to use. In addition, the United States political parties were going through a major transition in 1936 original timeline. Democrats becoming more socially liberal and physically aggressive, while Republicans were becoming more conservative. Kaiserreich's lack of a New Deal makes this even harder, as the New Deal Democrats don't really exist, and to reflect that is even harder to portray the parties correctly. As a result, here is the party situation for New England. Democrats start in the social conservative and social liberal slots. The social conservative slot doesn't perfectly describe them, but can fit many of the religious working class voters of New England. As the 50s drag on, the social conservative Democrats will die out and will be replaced entirely by social liberals. While these ideologies are not perfect descriptions, we believe that this transition reflects the changes in the Democratic Party well. Here is the starting situation for New England. Excuse me. Hold on. There are a few changes since the last teaser for New England, but in spirit, everything is mostly the same. New England starts with a massive economic boom. One thing we learned when researching New England is that the area that compromises New England and Kalterkrieg made up 35% of the United States GDP in 1950 original timeline. This is a staggeringly high number, especially considering that Kalterkrieg Germany is only 60% of the original timeline United States GDP. Of course, we have nerfed them from that 35% number a fair amount. The loss of the rest of the nation and the recovery from the New Deal coming a fair bit later both factor into that. However, their economy is among the 5 largest in the world, and New England is poised to become a true world power. Its partnership with Canada has freed much of Europe. However, there is great work still to be done. New England's first order of business is the pacification and integration of the new states. Through a tree and various decisions, the player will do just that, gaining the 2 new states as cores just before the 1949 election. These focuses are mainly about raising compliance and reducing the effect of the politically radical state's spirit. Once compliance is high enough and the tree is complete, Congress will vote on statehood for Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Later on in the progress report, we will discuss the process by which New England passes laws. To discuss the 1949 election, we must first discuss one of our brand new systems in Kalterkrieg, which will be present in all American factions, the state interface. This interface displays the current governor, the composition of the state's congressional delegation, as well as the popularity of each party in that state. Because of this system, we can actually simulate the Electoral College. You can see each state's electoral votes as well, and you better sharpen your electoral map and campaign strategically, because it is properly calculated thanks to one of our best coders, Maho. When elections occur, the congressional delegation will be proportional to the popularities of each party in that state. If a Senate seat is up for election, it will go to the largest party, same with gubernatorial races. We know this isn't perfectly representative. Whoa! Excuse me. We know this isn't perfectly representative, but we feel this is the best way to present the American electoral system to the player. President Baldwin will be running for re-election against Governor of Upstate New York and former Ambassador to Canada. Whoops. Gosh, all sorts of technical difficulties today. W. Averell Harriman. Baldwin is pretty unpopular. His cuts to social services and partial rollbacks of the Second Square Deal is unpopular in the new state of New York City in particular, a state that wields tremendous influence despite its geographical size. Harriman is running on a new brand of democratic politics, advocating for government healthcare subsidies, an increased education budget, and increased consumer protections. These policies are likely to be popular in the new states of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York City. He is relying on these states, plus his home state of upstate New York, to carry him to victory. While they will each have their own agendas post-election, the very outside lines of this tree, They will also share many of the same goals, the inside lines. They will each share the same broad foreign policy, but will vary based on who the Secretary of State is. Harriman will choose Dean Acheson, a main proponent of the Canadian Montgomery Plan, a strategy to use financial support to prevent European accord nations from falling to the Reichspakt. Baldwin's Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, will continue his doctrine of strong military support with support for the Montgomery Plan. Many of these focuses will require the consent of the New England Congress. On a focus completion, a mission to pass the bill in the House will begin. As you can see, the descriptions of the focuses will tell you which factions/parties will support the bill or not. If you have support for the bill in the House, you can pass the bill right away. It will then trigger a similar mission for the Senate. Once you pass the bill in the Senate, you will get access to the applicable bonus. For the National Highway Act, it is a series of decisions to, build the national highway system. Many of these focuses will require support in Congress to gain access to their effect, but even if you don't start with the support of Congress, you can gain it through other whipping decisions. We realize this isn't perfectly accurate, but we did this to make this fun to play. NATO and the Vancouver Summit. In late 1948, New England, the Great Lakes Government, Canada, and the Pacific States of America will meet at the Vancouver Summit. All four nations will sign on to join the North American Trade Organization. Based on the European coal and steel community, this organization will reduce tariffs between the nations, allowing them to pool their resources and isolate the American Union state. This will also work on mutually beneficial infrastructure projects like the St. Lawrence Seaway and connecting the Trans-Canada Highway to the new interstate highway system. NATO will have the opportunity to expand to the Caribbean, Central America, and even South America. The New England economy. The New England economy has grown to massive levels, but it is not immune to bad times. The integration of the new states will not be easy, and expanding the infrastructure of New England to integrate with Canada and NATO is a major project in the 1950s. This tree will span most of the first half of the game, maybe longer. The Delaware Commission is a reference to the Delaware River Valley, a major estuary in the new states, and will be a major point of development. Electrification, medium-density housing, and business expansion will all be major projects proposed by the Delaware Commission. Also contained within this tree are plans for NATO expansions. The first in the Caribbean will be unlocked in the early 1950s and will be targeted at the former British colonies, Jamaica and Trinidad, as well as Cuba and Puerto Rico. The second expansion in the mid-1950s will be targeted towards Central America, namely Panama and Costa Rica. Finally, lastly, the final expansion in South America will target Colombia and Venezuela. Each of these expansions will unlock decisions to develop these nations from the NATO budget. Another major player in the American economy is Canada. Canada has been buying weapons and ships from New England for almost 10 years at this point, and the relationship has been incredibly beneficial for both parties. While the player can use licensed production and regular lend-lease for land-based military equipment, one area we wanted to expand was the capability for New England to build ships for Canada. Via this mechanic, set up by myself and Duodex, Canada can order cruisers or carriers. Battleships are largely phased out, and smaller ships are so cheap that we felt it would clutter the UI. The ships built for Canada will have no modules, but Canada will receive bonuses to retrofitting speed, enabling them to customize them. We are really proud of this mechanic. What's next for New England? Many of the things I've discussed will be resolved by around 1953-1954, but that's only half the game. We have the rest of New England largely planned but not quite implemented yet, but progress is proceeding nicely. As per the Fortress New England spirit, the New England Army requires quite a bit of reform. The New England military trees will be quite extensive. Some of you military nerds may recognize the names from some of the New England Army divisions, and just you regular history nerds will love these ship names. As a teaser for post-1953, here is a collage of all possible presidents of New England in 0.1. Instead of making you guess, here they are in order from top left to bottom right. Herbert Lehman, Nelson Rockefeller, John Foster Dulles, W. Averell Harriman, Raymond Baldwin, Thomas Dewey, and of course, John F. Kennedy. I hope you enjoyed our progress report on New England. If you want to keep following the mod, subscribe to Kalterkrieg on Reddit and join our Discord. Once we know our next PR, here's a teaser for it. Oops, I forgot to include the teaser, I think. Yeah, my bad. Oh shoot, yeah, just Maple Leaf forever. Anyway, so let's see if there was anything in particular I wanted to talk about. I really like the this idea they're going with the the shifting political systems, because like we do talk about, when we talk about American history, we do talk about the big switch that happened in the 1960s, but of course the seeds for that were planted in the New Deal years. So I like that, how that is going to play out. You know, obviously you're going to have to go to the report itself, which I should always have linked below in the description, so you could check out some of the details on some of these. Yeah, I like these new focuses, by the way. The stuff we're integrating the new states. It's got a really nice aesthetic to it. And yeah, this I think is going to be really, really good. The sort of simulated electoral college / showing, you know, how many seats there are in the House and stuff like that. I do wonder how that is going to affect performance. I think in theory it shouldn't really do anything, because if you have it's probably, you know, it's only going to change every 2 years whenever there's an election, so it's not like it's something the AI is going to have to constantly be checking how many House seats there are there and stuff like that. I was also noticing that there is a ton more unlocked slots, or maybe Massachusetts is just special. I'm also noticing here that there are foreign claims by the CSA on this territory. Massachusetts is, like, you know, deep in the territory. But I think this is interesting because I'm wondering if this implies that the CSA can return, or maybe this is just something that's there because of you know, they're modifying Kaiserreich code or something. But curious, that would have some very serious implications if the CSA could possibly return. Alright, yeah, there's the election season stuff. Was there anything else in particular I wanted to draw attention to? Yeah, the Congress stuff I think will be fun. Always like mechanics like that, stuff to keep you busy during peacetime, and Kalterkrieg seems to have quite a bit of that. Yeah, I think that's it. This is a biography of Kennedy, by the way. I wanted to pull up a picture of him, and yeah, it's a decent book. I own it. That's it. I'm Kalterkrieg History Games, and I will see you in the next progress report. Have a great day. Oh, also, YouTube memberships are in fact now live, so if you want to support the channel, the best way that you could do that is by becoming a member. Going to be 4-hour minimum streams every Sunday for members, and you know, you get emojis and stuff as well. But the most important thing is that you're supporting the channel. Anyway, see you in the next one.